Welcome back to the Political Spectrum podcast here at Heartland Community College. My name is Andrea Merkel.
And my name's Rebecca.
And today with us we have Hunter Spencer, who is our sound technician. We also have Patrick Cortesi joining us, who is the McLean County Democratic Party chair, and we are so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have an opportunity to do this.
Awesome. If you don't mind starting a little introduction about yourself.
Sure. My name is Patrick Cortesi. I'm a Chicago transplant. I moved down here about 25 years ago. I love Bloomington Normal. I love being here in McLean County. And obviously, I love politics. So I got involved with politics ever since I was a young boy. My mom was a social activist. She marched with Dr. King. She protested at the 1968 convention in Chicago. So a lot of my passions for this field come from her. We were always hyper aware, and she always made sure we were paying attention to what was going on in our local community up there in the suburbs of Chicago. So I brought that back down here, I should say, and looked for an opportunity to work on that locally, and got involved with the local Democratic Party, and the rest is history, as they say.
That's awesome. I think it's so important for parents to be vigilant about their kids' involvement in politics. Not vigilant, probably the best word, but just, supportive, I guess. Because I think it's so imperative to get involved from an early age, and then hopefully hear those perspectives from an unbiased source. I mean, I don't think anybody's parents are truly unbiased, but trying to be and educating your children is super important.
Oh, completely agree. And then I think it's best just to make sure they're good news consumers and good critical thinkers, right? I mean, I knew my mom's political beliefs, but she never pushed those on us. But we were always taught to read and watch the news with a very critical eye and make sure we understood what was really happening.
I think that's really awesome. So if you're good, we can just jump straight into these questions. Perfect. First one I have is, what is your role as the party chair in McLean County?
So my role as chair of a local county party is to get as many Democrats elected as possible. That's our primary mission. That's our chief goal. There are other things that we try and do as a party, but that's our main focus. So my job is to put this party in the best position possible to do that. Whether that means recruiting candidates, training them, making sure we have the funds available to do all that, to oversee numerous committees and volunteers, and basically just to make sure we're all rowing in the same direction. It's like herding cats sometimes, but as long as we're pointing in the same direction, usually you can be successful.
So kind of going along with that, have you seen any challenges with recruiting other candidates or getting new ones?
Oh, for sure. I think because of the hyper-partisan aspect of politics right now, and there's some very negative vitriol happening, good people who would normally want to run for an office are instead choosing not to stay away from it. Especially in these nonpartisan municipal elections that we've got that, election coming up on Tuesday. It was difficult to recruit people to run for some of those offices, especially school boards. They didn't want to have to deal with raising thousands of dollars, with exposing their personal lives to social media and personal attacks. And I can't say I blame them for that. So, and you've got to give some credit to the folks who, even with all that, still chose to step up and run for an office.
That's pretty much exactly what the Republican chair said. He said that a lot of good people aren't running for all parties really, because some might own a business, and then if they run for the opposite party, people won't support their business anymore and stuff like that. So it really floods into your personal life too.
It really does. And again, it's more noticeable. And I think a bigger problem in these nonpartisan races, right? They're supposed to be nonpartisan. So I have an issue with the fact that our local Republican Party chose to out and endorse people. It's not respecting the integrity of it being nonpartisan, in my belief. And so we as a Democratic Party purposely chose to not do that this cycle. We've rarely, if ever, endorsed a municipal or nonpartisan candidate. We have a mechanism in our bylaws to allow us to do so, but it's a very high bar. It would take some doing to make that happen, and there are certainly candidates that are worth it, but the candidates that we are working with are doing so and asked us to respect the nonpartisan aspect of these races.
All right, so on to our next question. Have you always been a part of the Democratic Party, or like how did you come into the Democratic Party?
Well, as I mentioned before in my introduction, my mom obviously was a Democrat. So I think it started at a very young age. We were exposed to a lot of candidates and a lot of literature, a lot of news that backed those viewpoints. My mom was a big fan of the Kennedys. She worked for Bobby Kennedy's campaign. We had records of Bobby Kennedy's speeches that we would listen to on occasion. So I think it started at a very young age. I volunteered at the Democratic National Convention in 1996, which was held at the United Center in Chicago. That was the year that Bill Clinton accepted his second nomination. I was there the night he gave that speech, and say what you want about President Clinton, but that guy knew how to work a room. And when he was done with his speech, I would have run through a wall for that guy. So just kind of carrying those experiences forward, always looking for opportunities to get more involved. Communication is my forte. I'm a good writer. I'm a good speaker. I can do a pretty good speech when I need to. So finding opportunities to use those talents in politics just kind of lend itself to making that happen.
Right. And then as someone who's like pretty much stayed in my whole party lane my whole life, have you ever found yourself kind of questioning, like, did I actually choose this? Or like, where have you ever questioned?
Sure, I have. And back in the day, I was too young to vote then, but I probably would have voted for Governor Thompson, who was a Republican, right? There are probably some moderate conservatives that I would have voted for. Judy Bard Topinka was my state rep for a long, long time when I grew up in the suburbs. She was a Republican, but I would have gladly voted for her because she did a great job. So it's not a blind party loyalty thing. But as the years have gone on, and especially in the last, 10, 12 years or so, that divide has become so much greater. It's become more obvious to me that the Democratic Party is where I'm home.
That was a really, really good wrap up there. I like that. And then speaking of the Democratic Party being your home, we all like to make changes in home. What changes would you like to see?
So are we talking national, state, local?
All three.
All three. Local, I think we're doing a really good job of getting our candidates elected. I think our messaging is pretty good. We could probably do a better job of using newer techniques to get that messaging out. I think that's an aspect of our local county party that I want to see improve. We also can be doing a better job of being good community partners. There are lots of community organizations around in our neighborhoods, and I would like to see the local party do more and help out more and be more involved in our neighborhoods in that aspect. From a state party perspective, wow, I don't know that you could really do any better than what they've done these last few years. It's very inclusive. It's very they've done such a good job of involving the county parties and in their decision making, in their fundraising. They've done such a great job supporting us as a local party. I can't see how you could really do any better than that. I was really glad to see them take an active role in these municipal elections, again, I would love it to go back to the real nonpartisan way of doing this, but we're not there. And I mentioned in an interview the other day that while I would love to see that, there's no way to put that genie back in the bottle. So if this is how it's going to be, we can't let our opponents make all this money and have all this support from various organizations that we were going to need to step up and help out the folks that we believe in, that share our values and beliefs. And I'm really glad we did that this cycle. As far as a national viewpoint, I think they could learn some lessons from our state party. I would like to see the national party have a bigger role or do more to help out local parties be more in sync with messaging opportunities and things like that. They've gotten better, but I still think there's some room to improve there.
Awesome. Yeah, that was kind of a loaded question. You did a great job working through that. Thank you.
Kind of going along with that, what do you want the Republican and Libertarian parties to make? Like, what changes do you want them to make?
Well, we'll start with the Libertarians. I know Kevin and I know Steve, and they're good guys. I just don't. My issues with both of those parties are philosophical. So I don't know that they're ever going to make the changes that I would need to see to get me to ever consider belonging to one of their parties. Does that mean we can't ever work together on an issue or a campaign or a problem? Of course not. I'd be happy to do that when those opportunities arise. But especially with the Republican Party right now, Democrats believe in supporting our institutions, not attacking them. Democrats believe in inclusivity, not using the politics of fear to try and divide people and to make people scared of what might happen if people are elected. That whole philosophy of doing that, the whole idea that they would actively participate in an insurrection in Washington, D.C., that they believe that DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is some sort of evil that's against anti-Christian values, that religious viewpoints belong in our schools, in our public schools. I can't agree with any of that. And until their party becomes a little more welcoming, until their party becomes a little more, like you mentioned, inclusive and understanding and knows what having a sense of empathy is about, I can't see. It'd be really hard for me to work with any current members of this new local Republican Party that we seem to be witnessing.
Yeah, I agree. We're just going to move straight on to the next question. You did a fantastic job of answering that one as well. So for the future of the Democratic Party, as far as like McLean County, what do you see it looking like? Like, what steps are you guys taking right now?
So we're building up our infrastructure. We're building up our core. We're putting procedures and methods in place to create a party that is not necessarily person dependent, if that makes any sense. So the candidates that were really successful this last November were so because they basically ran a machine type of campaign, right? There are techniques, there are opportunities that are proven successful, that we know work. And so we need to make sure those are put in place for our local party. What I told my executive board after November election, we took a little break, and we're now working on this, that I want our legacy to be, is this current version of the board, is to leave behind a legacy where no matter who comes in behind us, right? I'm not going to be chair forever. My other people on the executive board, they're not going to be their committee chairs forever. But let's put some procedures in place where the next person who comes in, you can just hand them a book, and tell them how we did it and show them how it worked. And the next person can come in and do that. So I'm trying to create some institutional success plans.
A playbook, if you will.
Yes, exactly. To have that ready to go for the next people in line.
You go get him, coach. And then I'm good skipping over Illinois, but then what do you see the future of the Democratic Party looking like in the United States as we currently do hold the presidential seat?
Yeah. So I think, again, this is going to be a tough fight in terms of national politics. It's easier in Illinois because I think, obviously, there are enough folks who are either progressive, liberal, or have common sense and can see what that means in terms of our governing. There are places in this country where they don't see that, where they're living in an alternate reality, where they just don't understand, I think, what's been happening the last few years, who the people that they're supporting for political offices really, the damage that they're doing. And until that changes, I don't know how that's going to improve. So I think the Democratic Party nationally will keep running candidates, will keep running campaigns based on empathy, based on inclusion, to be that big tent party, to appeal to working families and moms and dads, keep appealing and speaking about issues that are important to a wide variety of people in this country, right? I'll give you a great example. So last fall, McLean County became one of 4 counties downstate to vote for J.B. Pritzker. It was the first time McLean County has voted for a Democratic governor since 1948, which was at that point Adlai Stevenson, our homegrown guy. And some people were asking me, well, how did you make that happen? How did JB end up winning McLean County? Because really the rest of downstate was pretty red. And I thought it was because of a couple things. I thought he and Representative Sharon Chung and State Senator Dave Kaler ran campaigns, and really up and down the ballot, but those 3 particularly, that focused on issues, that they were talking about things that were important to those kinds of voters in McLean County. And a big reason for that success were college-age voters, right? So at ISU, they had 1,700 election day voters. 1,400 of them registered that day. Got out of bed, showed up at their door, got a knock on their dorm room, whatever, said, hey, have you voted yet? No, come on, let's go. And showed up at the Bone Center, registered, and voted that day. And
I also registered the day I voted, so one true. And then Hunter, our sound tech, he has been complaining about that 1,500 register on the voting day since it happened.
for sure.
I work for the county clerk's office in the elections division, so I had to deal with all that.
I'm so sorry, Hunter, but you did a great job. And here, we were talking about like being bipartisan. I have to give Kathy and Michael some credit, right? She really actually ran a pretty good campaign. I would like to see that county clerk's office make voting easier for a whole lot of folks. But really, I don't have any issues with this last campaign. It ran pretty smooth. I wish the results had come out a little quicker, but that's me. But
talk to Hunter about that, and then he can talk to you about that 1,500 person influx.
Right, exactly. But the point being is those candidates talked about issues that were important to the people that they wanted to come out and vote. Right? They didn't say come out and vote for me because I'm a Democrat. I'm sure some people did that, but I think the vast majority of, especially those college students, came out and voted because they showed up a lot. J.B. Pritzker was here in McLean County, 10 times. Sharon Chung was always on a campus somewhere, right? Whether it was here at Heartland or at ISU or at Wesleyan, they were always here. And it's a lot easier for somebody to go vote for a person if they've actually met them or at least seen them, at least heard them in person. And when they did that Get Out the Vote rally at ISU, first day of early voting, just in October, I believe it was, J.B. Pritzker did the smartest political thing I've seen in a long time. He happened to be in a quad on campus and happened to catch the timing just right where it was in between classes. So he was just wrapping up his speech, and all of a sudden hundreds of college students were walking by. And he's the governor, right? I mean, he could have just said thank you and gotten in his car and left, and nobody would have blamed him for it. But he didn't. He stuck around for an hour, asked his staff to create a line, and sat there and took selfies with college students for a good hour afterwards. I mean, he realized that, A, it's a good way of meeting young people and really getting to know what's important to them. But he also understood, and this is my favorite thing because this is what I do, the communications messaging aspect of this, right? Every one of those college kids has social media, has an Instagram account or a TikTok account. And guess what they were doing all afternoon that evening? Sharing their videos, sharing their pictures on social media. So it had a reach of thousands upon thousands of college-age kids in McLean County who all saw that the governor was willing to come out and hang out with them.
Governor JB is probably one of the most poignantly social men I've ever met in my life. He came, my parents own a restaurant in Pontiac, and he came one time. He was on his way to Carbondale, I think, and then he just stopped in. And with so much grace and ease, but also so much natural canter, he managed to talk to our entire restaurant, which was packed, hundreds of people. Entire restaurant's packed, and he's just going through them perfectly. And I don't even think he was really supposed to be there for that long.
I'm sure he was.
He definitely was not. He was probably there for almost 45 minutes to an hour, and I think they had probably scheduled 15 minutes for him to be there. But I mean, yeah, it was good. It was a good day.
So to your question, what can the National Party do better? That's what they can do better. A, find candidates and recruit candidates that can do that, and then pay more attention to their messaging. A lot of good things have happened in the last 2 years nationally. Democrats have gotten a lot done. They've delivered all over the place, all over this country. And they need to make sure people know about that. And we're not so much worried about who's getting indicted, what crazy things are happening in other areas of the country. I think Democrats really need to do a better job of messaging the good things that we've gotten done in the last couple of years.
Awesome. Thank you.
So both the Republican and Democratic parties state that they support individual freedom. How do you think the parties differ on that message?
Well, to me, individual freedom means being able to be your true, authentic self, right? So we can start with that. So let's talk about transgender rights. Let's talk about LGBTQ plus rights. Obviously, the Republican Party does not believe in your freedom to experience any of that, right? To be your true, authentic self. So I have an issue with the fact that they say they're for personal freedoms as long as it's the freedom they want to see you have. Where I think Democrats obviously are a lot more inclusive when it comes to those types of issues. And I think we understand, and I think we're willing to allow people to live the lives that they want to live. There's not a lot of constrictions, right? There's nothing being forced on you. We just want let you be who you want to be. And I think that's the most important thing at all. Personal freedoms, when you have one party who's talking about banning books and getting teachers fired for having literature in their classroom that maybe is a little, I don't know what the right word is, but maybe a little above the grade level, but it's science, right? So if that's a problem to you, if you're banning books, I don't see how you can be for personal freedom. If you refuse to believe in the scientists, whether we're talking about the pandemic, whether we're talking about climate change, whether we're talking about what it means to become transgender, to change your sex, if you're not willing to believe the scientists and the psychology behind doing that, if you're not willing to have a sense of empathy and understanding about the mental health aspects of being able to do that, then I don't see how you could be for personal freedom. That, to me, is the exact opposite of that. So we as Democrats try to be understanding about those things, to try and have a sense of empathy about those things. Could we be better? Sure. But I think we're light years ahead of the Republican Party on being able to understand those types of issues. I'll say it again. If you're attacking our institutions, if you're showing up at school board meetings and library board meetings and the Capitol, and your job is to destroy all that, then that's not very patriotic. That's not very personal freedom-like to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Being like a political science major, or in the future anyways, I definitely realized that they both say that they support individual freedom, but there's a difference between personal, like economic freedom, and then just personal individual freedom. So.
And the other thing I'll say, and this is probably more of a hot butt issue, and local Republicans like to call or say that they're pro-life, right? That is one of the personal freedoms that they believe in. I would instead call them pro-birth, because I don't think they have an invested interest in taking care of people after they're born, right? If you're not willing to make sure that folks have health insurance, if you're not willing to make sure they've got a helping hand if they need it, if you think all your tax money should only be spent on fixing roads and not helping out your fellow citizens, then it's hard to make that claim that you're pro-life, in my opinion.
One of the biggest things that people say on social media is, I'm not stating my own views, but they say that Republicans are pro-birth, like you said, because they want them to be born, but then they don't care about the gun laws, because once kids are in school, it's like, oh, like it's not really our issue anymore.
Right.
And that's what I've noticed.
Right. There's not a sense of responsibility, a shared responsibility there, right? And you can make the same case for women's health, right? And abortion rights. I mean, abortion is health care. Not everybody I know nobody makes that choice lightly. And I have some personal experiences where those choices were heartbreaking, but medically necessary. And to not allow a person to be able to do that is not freedom. There's no freedom there at all.
Yeah. Strong agree on my end. So let's just move on to our next question. So some Republicans are trying to turn the great state of Illinois red by 2030. Thoughts, feelings?
So what are we defining as turning it red? Because out of our 102 counties, they probably have 90 or so that typically vote red. So
I think that we'll keep it to like the governor is a Republican and then the senators are Republican.
Got it. So they want to take over the state legislature and the governor's mansion by 2030. So what was the question exactly? I'm sorry.
So some Republicans are trying to turn the state red by like pushing our legislature to the Republican side.
Got it.
How do you feel about that, and do you think that they'll succeed?
I don't think they'll succeed. Not on the current path that the state Republican Party is on. They're out of touch with the vast majority of people in the state. They're out of touch. There's no common sense legislation coming out of that committee. There are very few candidates that would be willing to do that, to cross an aisle and get something done in a bipartisan way. The folks that they're driving out, right? The local folks like Jason Berkman and Dan Brady. I mean, people who can cross an aisle, who can work with their opposition to get things done. They're labeling them as rhinos and pushing them out of the party. So if that is... As long as they maintain that current trajectory, as long as they maintain that current program, I don't see how they're going to be able to succeed. It would take something major to get into the governor's mansion, and by major, like a drastic economic downturn or some sort of catastrophe. And there's such a majority in the Illinois House right now, and especially after redistricting, which we just went through. I mean, those were done in such a way to ensure the long-term viability of the Democratic Party in Illinois.
Oh, sorry. I kind of lost my own question. But in an Illinois, school funding is based on property taxes. We're moving on to the next question, if you haven't noticed. Do you think that this sets children in impoverished areas up for failure because of the divide of quality of schools?
Yes. Very, very quickly, yes. So, I mean, it was the way it was originally designed in the state of Illinois. A good portion of the school funding was supposed to come from the state, and property taxes were meant to supplement that funding. And because of a wide variety of bad economic decisions, bad policy decisions, et cetera, that have been going back decades, this state, until recently, was progressing down a hole where school districts were more and more reliant on their local property taxes for their funding, as opposed to making that happen from the state. And especially then when you consider the fact that a lot of what they were having to pay for was state mandates. It was unfunded mandates. That's not fair to any school district. So at the time, State Senator Andy Menard had put forth and gotten passed through the Illinois legislature and signed by Governor Pritzker an evidence-based funding plan that is starting to turn that tide, that is starting to make a real difference. But that hole was so deep, it's going to take a little while longer to get that fixed. And then we could also talk about pension liabilities and things like that. There's a lot of work to be done. But as a concept, school districts relying on local property taxes is a bad plan and a bad idea. It hurts low-income communities disproportionately. And yeah, it affects those schools, those students, those educators, and that's not fair to anyone involved in that.
Yeah, this is one of like my biggest concerns is the school system right now. My mom went to LaGrange High, which is like in the suburbs, and
That's where I grew up.
Really?
I grew up in Brookfield, so she went to Lyons Township?
Yeah, she did.
Okay.
But so she grew up there, and then my dad grew up in a town that has like 900 people. So he graduated in a class of 20, and there's just like this ginormous divide between the two schools, and neither one of them are really poverty-stricken, but it's even just like the size of the town can even hurt the way someone, like, my dad was one of the only people that went to college and got a PhD, and that's just how that town works, where LaGrange, everyone goes to college.
Yeah, that happens on a regular basis out of that school. Right. I was just out of that district. Had I been able to go to Lyons Township, I would have. My public school choice was not a good school at that time, so I chose to go to a private school instead. And then, so that's also, I mean, while we can talk about this just for a quick second. So when you see local Republicans attacking our schools, right, especially our public schools, like what you're seeing in Unit 5 right now, let's not forget the ultimate goal of those attacks, right? They want to damage those public school systems so badly that parents choose to take their kids out of them and instead enroll in their private, usually religious academies where there's no oversight to their curriculum, where they can teach those kids whatever form of history they want them to believe. And so keep that in mind when you hear these attacks on Unit 5. I'm not saying Unit 5 is completely blameless. I wasn't involved in those conversations. I don't sit on that board. But it's not fair to publish, again, the educators, the administrators, or the students for any mistakes that might have happened in the last 10, 20 years. I think we need to do what we can to set them on a good path and make sure that they're able to get the education that they want, that they deserve.
So kind of to go along with that, do you think that we would still be in the situation that we're in right now with the Unit 5 referendum if our school system wasn't set up based on property taxes?
No, we would. If the state had been paying their fair share the way they were supposed to happen, no, I don't think they would be in the hole that they're in, right? It was a weird time. They expanded so fast, Unit 5 did, and it was unsustainable. And so this kind of bubble bursting was bound to happen at some point, right? So we just got to get them through this and then put them in a better position so they can ride out any of those things that might happen in the future. And hopefully now that we have Democratic representation in Springfield for Unit 5 and Representative Sharon Chung and State Senator Dave Kaler, and as long as we have a Democrat in the governor's mansion, then I think there's a real good opportunity to make sure that the state is doing a better job of supporting local school districts.
So it sounds like you're in favor of the Unit 5 referendum, if I'm correct.
Yep,
Yes.
I am.
So for people who are impoverished and can't really afford that, how do you expect that? Because some people aren't are able to afford school supplies for their children. So do you think that this is going to greatly impact those people?
What they might see as an increased tax, is that how would that proportionally or disproportionately affect lower income folks? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely going to be hard, and nobody wants to do this, but it's important to keep in mind that through some complicated math, that in the long run, this will end up actually decreasing people's taxes once they're able to pay off their bonds. So to your point, yes, it will disproportionately, I think, affect some of those families. And I don't like the fact that that's going to happen. It will make that harder for those folks. So I think we're going to need to find a way to help. And so maybe, there are programs, there are opportunities in our communities to do that. And maybe that's something we as a local county party then, take up on, right? If we understand that this is happening, if we can see that, then maybe that's something we can help out and get done.
Awesome. I love that. I like the community of caring idea.
I love it.
Mm-hmm. And I guess my final question is what's your biggest advice to college students wanting to get involved in politics?
Get involved. There's a number of opportunities and different ways to actually just get in and get involved. Find a local candidate and go help. We, as a local county party, one of the other things that we do that I think sets us apart from our local Republican and Libertarian counterparts, we have an internship program. So we've already accepted some interns for the summer. We'll be looking for dozens of them in the fall. We love working with college students and teaching them all aspects of what having a career in politics may look like. I think some people sometimes consider being in politics, they only see the candidate side of it, right? They just assume it means how to run for office or what it's like to be a candidate. And that's certainly important and certainly an option or an avenue for you to go.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Patrick. And if you don't have any more questions for us, I think that's all we've got for you today.
I had such a good time doing this. Thank you so much. And I would remind your listeners to make sure, like we were just talking about, find ways to get involved. We're a better community. We're a better local party when we have diverse viewpoints from all demographics, all ages, all types of people. So please find a way to get involved because we need your help.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Political Spectrum podcast. The podcast is hosted by the leadership of the Political Science Club at Heartland Community College. The club meets every other Wednesday on the normal campus at 2:30 p.m. Thank you and have a good day.